Dude, I'll go out in left field, right? I think a lot of Met fans would like to see just a random dude hanging out there in left field and having McNeil for this year.
Yeah, listen, as long as you don't throw your helmet around when you're out there, you'll probably be just fine.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to get into a fight with Lindor, right? That's what I'm not going to do.
Welcome back to the Meet the Mets Fans podcast. I'm your host, Stefan, and I'm here with my guy, Justin. How's it going, Just?
Let's go, Stefan. Let's have another great episode, my friend.
A lot going on with our team. There's rumors swirling. Winter meetings are upon us, right? When you guys hear this episode, it's going to be coming out on a Friday. The winter meetings begin officially on Monday, but teams start reporting. Everybody's there on Sunday night, so things really can happen on a Sunday night. Last year, Juan Soto signed on a Sunday night, so Sunday could be big also. So Met fans, get ready for what hopefully is a big weekend, what hopefully is a big early next week as the winter meetings start taking place. And we're going to take you guys through a lot of the chatter that we're hearing and things going on around this team.
Yeah, we got a fan watch going on here, right? Between Diaz, between Alonso, between Bellinger, between Schwarber, right? All of these names are going to get brought up today, and we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth as these winter meetings are approaching. I know for baseball fans, this is probably the most exciting time during the off season. Baseball is that slow, long, drawn out off season that we have here, just like the regular season. And, you know, the winter meetings are really like captivating and something that I know a lot of fans look forward to because a lot of action happens. You know, we've seen a couple of things happening here or there, specifically with the Mets. They've been one of the most active off-season teams so far this year. And we'll see that hopefully that just continues and they just continue to improve our roster.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into our State of the Mets segment. That is what Met fans want to react to, the things that are happening around our team. And I think the big reaction, and Justin and I had an instant reaction to this the night that Devin Williams' contract was announced. But we've heard from a bunch of different Met fans that have sent us their reactions to the Devin Williams signing. We want to play some of those fan reactions for you guys. We've had some time to process the Devin Williams acquisition, and we'll talk a little bit more about Devin Williams as a New York Met.
Yeah, I know that when we had an instant reaction, there was a lot of information that was kind of getting swirled around with specifics in terms of contracts. We have those specifics. We just want to clarify those things. It is 3 years, $51 million. What this means is that there's a $6 million signing bonus that's going to be spread over 3 years. So essentially, at $6 million, there's going to be a $2 million this year, $2 million in 2027, and then $2 million in 2028. What this means then for the New York Mets in terms of its payroll, okay, he also has $15 million that is deferred. What I have seen through what we look through is Spotrax, which is really, I think, one of the more accurate websites in terms of payrolls that we have here. It looks like it's going to be about $12 million against the cap this year. And when we think about Devin Williams and whether or not he is worth $12 million, let's get into that. And let's hear some of our fan reactions.
Absolutely. So we are going to start off with this first one is from Geno. I'm going to try to pull this up right now, and we're all going to hear what Geno from Lindenhurst had to say about on the acquisition on the night that it was announced.
Another Yankee wants to be a Met? What's going on in the world? Is the evil empire falling? Devin Williams, we'll take him up and down year. As long as we can keep Diaz, I'm all right with it. I don't want this to be a replacement. I want it to be an additional arm in the pen. You know, give him the 8th inning. The pressure seemed to get to him a little bit in the Bronx. I know they changed their whole facial hair policy just for him. Next up, Bellinger. Come on down. Queens is ready for you, bud.
He seems excited. I love that.
I love a little Yankee jab as well. All right, facial hair policy. I saw something actually on social media about the Yankees potentially going back on their facial hair policy now that Devin Williams has joined the New York Mets.
I saw that too. I think someone's just trolling.
Yeah, I don't know if it's real or not.
It's got to be trolling Hal on that one. But that would be great, honestly. Would love that.
Yeah,
we got next up. Yeah, next up we got Stevie from Levittown. Let's hear what Stevie's got to say.
Devin Williams, 3 years, $50 million, right off the bat. I like it. I think it's a very good signing. Does not mean that we can't go after Edwin. If we do give Diaz his money, we're going to have one of the best 8th, 9th inning setup and closers in the National League. And if for some reason he does walk, at least we now have a guy who could be a formidable, hopefully will be a formidable closer for us. If we did not sign him and Edwin walks, puts us in a bad situation. So hopefully Stearns does the right thing. We pay Edwin, I think, $20 million, 5 years. I'm totally good with that, and let's see how it pans out.
It's a level-headed Met fan right there. We normally don't get those.
I hope David Stearns agrees with Stevie from Levittown. All right, let's 5 years. Do what you got to do.
We love Stevie from Levittown.
All right, our next one is going to be Connor from Long Island. Let's hear from Connor.
Here's my quick 30-second thought on the Devin Williams signing by the New York Mets. It is a great signing if and only if you bring back Edwin Díaz as your obvious closer and Devin Williams as a setup man. If Devin Williams is Edwin Díaz's replacement, then that's a problem. Williams is coming off an awful year. Outside that awful year, though, he's been an elite closer. But still, mentally, I don't think he's ready for the closer role. Put him in the 8th inning role and then bring back the best closer in baseball. Edwin Díaz in the 9th inning. You got your 1-2 punch all figured out. Easy.
Hey, it's easy, right? You know, I think that's a lot of reaction, right, was what we heard from Connor there. A lot of people are a little nervous, right? If Devin Williams is our closer, a lot of people believe that we need to be Devin Williams plus, right? And in this case, plus with the Edwin Díaz. All right, next up, we got Mike from Boston. Let's hear from Mike.
When Steve Cohen took ownership of the team, money, budgets, luxury tax, all that we thought was gone. So I need to see more. I don't mean to sound greedy, and I know a lot of us probably want just more and more and more, but a lot of these moves that David Stearns has made so far this offseason has kind of been, well, what's coming next? Eventually, the offseason is going to be over, spring training is going to be here, and hopefully we're not saying, well, what's coming next? Because we need to see moves starting to happen that make sense in a vacuum. So with that being said, I'm excited at the possibility of what's coming next. And I think, to be honest with you, last year was an outlier for Devin Williams. He's a career 2.45 ERA pitcher with 86 saves to his name across 6 MLB seasons so far, and an 8.6 WAR. So last year with that negative .3 WAR, 4.79 ERA, and 18 saves was the outlier, in my opinion. Yeah, last year I was bashing him in every group chat that I was in with every Yankee fan that was breaking my you-know-whats. But, until I can see him bounce back from what happened last year, I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic for all those reasons I outlined.
We got to get Mike from Boston on the pod. Love it. He's pulling out stats.
Our next one is from my guy Reiko, East New York. Reiko, tell us what you think about the acquisition.
Initially, I thought this signing was good. Of course, even if we don't get Diaz, it bolsters the bullpen. It makes them stronger. It makes the people happy. It's not like it's an unknown arm. But after a few days now, I'm thinking, if we don't get Diaz, if this doesn't turn into a huge bullpen of great arms, it's just going to be a flash in the pan. We're going to be excited for a second, and then it's back to the same old bullpen woes. We can't get anyone to come in and do anything because our starters can't go 5. And it's just, I think, going to be really lackluster of a signing if we don't get Diaz. And I just hope we do more than just this.
Yeah, I think Reiko, it's fair, right? Bullpen's obviously important, right? We've seen that there's not a perfect recipe in terms of what is success in this league. It's a copycat league, and a lot of teams want to copycat what's worked from the previous year. Having a successful bullpen doesn't always guarantee championships, right? For over the last 10 years, pretty much on average, the bullpen have ranked in about 10th on average for the World Series championships. When you're looking at that, bullpen matters, obviously. There's times where bullpen is ranked 2nd and they've won. There's times where it's ranked 27th and they've won. But, you definitely need to have that back of the bullpen solidified for to be success.
And we're going to hear from one more. This one is a audio message that we got from Joe in Brooklyn. Joe, take it away.
Love watching him pitch when he was at the Brewers, except for when Alonso took him deep. But other than that, he was fun to watch. His airbender slider is insane. Hopefully Diaz and his camp can figure it out with the Mets and he comes back. But if Diaz does go, I know I'm going to say this, but I trust the Mets will surround Williams with some other arms. Maybe that'll somehow figure itself out. But, I think the perfect situation would be Diaz and Williams there in the back of the bullpen. That would be really amazing. But we'll see what happens. But otherwise, I do like the Williams signing. I think it's a good one.
All right, thanks, Joe. Appreciate your response. We're going to dive right now into what we've thought after having heard from some of our Met fans, sharing their reactions and some of the things that we've found out, looked up over the last couple of days now that this acquisition has happened.
Yeah, I want to read something to you, Stefan. 5.59 ERA, a whip of 1.38, 7 blown saves. Not knowing who this player is, I want to ask you, would you want this pitcher on your team?
I think when you are looking, I don't want that pitcher on my team, right? I don't. Those numbers don't sound great on the surface, and if you tell me that guy is my closer now, I'm probably not excited about it.
Yeah, I want to tell you that was Edwin Díaz in 2019. I think a lot of Met fans forget how rough that first year was for Diaz. And whether or not you guys want to agree with this or disagree with this, right? But these guys are human beings. And the idea of getting traded and getting moved and not pitching in familiarity, it matters. Okay. And so we saw a guy like Edwin Díaz, who people are now saying, and he is the best closer in all of baseball. There is no argument that we have here. But those are the stats that we had in 2019, our first season here in Queens. And I think most Met fans at that point would have said, we got to run this guy out of here. He can't handle New York. And so there's been a lot of criticism of Devin Williams, his first year with the Yankees. And I'm going to be honest with you, the stats of Devin Williams with the Yankees in last year was better than the stats of Edwin Díaz in 2019. And so I think that, yes, we need to, again, don't hear what I'm not saying. I want Diaz back, but I think that we need to give a little bit more respect to Devin Williams here. From 2021 to 2024, this dude had a 1.8 ERA. I mean, you're talking an under 2 ERA over the course of a 5-year span. There's a reason why David Stearns traded one of the best closers in all of baseball in Josh Hader, who the Brewers had, because they saw this guy, Devin Williams, as an opportunity and an ability to pitch in this 9th inning and be successful, in which he was. And so I think that we need to just take a step back. I think we need to say to ourselves how lucky we are to get, personally, I think, a great pitcher under a really reasonable contract, especially when you're talking about that deferred money and that $12 million counting towards the books this year.
Yeah, I can't argue with the fact that Devin Williams has been a really, really, really good reliever for many years until this year with the Yankees. And I think it just makes Met fans nervous to think about whether or not he can overcome. We saw that Edwin Díaz was able to overcome. Will Devin Williams be able to do the same thing? That remains to be seen. But I think it's a really great thing that he already had that 1-year adjustment period to New York, to the media, to what it's like to feel that pressure, and he did it in pinstripes. Now you're coming to the New York Mets. There's still pressure. There's still all of that. If he ends up being our closer, there'll be more pressure there again to not potentially lose the job like he did with the Yankees. I personally think I want to still have a backup plan, right? And I do think that if the Mets miss on Edwin Díaz, which they should not, there is no excuse to miss, right? In my opinion, there is no scenario where you don't give Edwin Díaz what it takes to get him. If the Mets have said, we will not give him 5 years, that's the line. But we're willing to give him 4. And then some other team, let's call them the New York Yankees, goes out and says, Edwin Díaz, we're going to give you 5 years if you come back to the Bronx. I mean, that will be a clap back at the Mets, right? You took our guy. Now we're going to take your guy and we're going to bring the trumpets to the Bronx. I mean, I think that would be hurtful. And I think that Steve Cohen would not let it stand. He would look at David Stearns and say, no, you're going to give him 5 years because I'm not letting that happen. And maybe that's an extreme example of the Yankees, but any team that says we're willing to give you 5, if Edwin can come to them and say, hey, I'm going to take this deal because it's 5 years, it's stability for my family, you can't blame him for that. But then what I can say is if the Mets are willing to go 4, you got to be willing to go 5 if he can get it on the market. Maybe they're doing what they did with Pete Alonso last year and saying, Pete, if you can't get someone to give you the deal, we're not going to bid against ourselves. And maybe that's what's taking so long. So I guess my hope here is that Edwin Díaz is on the market. I don't think he should have ever gotten there in the first place, but he's there now. He's going to get whatever the best offer is, and hopefully the Mets get a chance to match, and there's no reason why they should not match whatever his best offer is. In the scenario where they don't do that, I think they have to protect themselves still. I respect that Devin Williams has been great in the past, but I think in the off possibility that he's not great when he becomes a New York Met, I want to have a backup plan in place. And I don't like that the backup plan right now is AJ Minter.
Yeah, I want to read, though, David Stern comments, right? So they officially announced Devin Williams yesterday, right, for the signing of the New York Mets. He then made a comment, and I just want to read out what he says because I think this speaks a lot of what you're saying right now. Devin is a dynamic pitcher who will bolster the back end of the bullpen. He is an experienced arm with a proven track record pitching in high-leverage situations. We are excited to welcome Devin and his family to Queens. David Stearns did not come out and say Devin Williams is our closer. He said he's going to be pitching in high-leverage situations. Devin Williams has proven that not only can he close games, but he also can pitch in those 7th and 8th innings. As I mentioned before, that 2021-2022 seasons when Josh Hader was with the Brewers, Devin Williams was not the closer. He was pitching in those 8th innings. He was successful. We saw last year with the Yankees, he got off to a bad start. He then transitioned, went into that 7th, 8th inning role, and then as you mentioned before, can he bounce back? Well, we saw in August and September, he pitched to a 2.5 ERA, right, in the month of August and September. And so, for me, I count that as a little bit of a bounce back, right? I think that there is a transition here. I think that it takes a while for these guys to get comfortable. I think that relievers at times, their numbers look bloated. Right? When you're looking at the underlying metrics of Devin Williams, it's still elite. When you're talking about his strikeouts, his hard hit rate, right? His chase rate, his walks are average. But it is like when you're looking at like percentiles, it's all red. Red being a good thing, right? It's like why they signed Juan Soto last year is that when you look at the underlying numbers of Juan Soto, it's all red. And David Stearns mentioned that, right, prior to Soto getting signed.
Yeah, the underlying numbers are there that defend Devin Williams. I think the average Met fan is not looking at those statistics and saying it. They're looking at the high ERA and the blown saves. And I think a solid argument back is, yeah, they picked spots for him to pitch and be successful in the 7th and 8th inning. I think more important than what he did in August and September for the Yankees is what he did in October, right? Because there are not low leverage situations in the playoffs, and he pitched well in the playoffs as well. So I do think if he ends up being the closer of the New York Mets, we should be excited by that. But I also think we need a backup plan. And I think this is a guy, though, that clearly likes being in New York. And I think that's important, right? He went through the struggle. He went through the media giving him crap and hearing that he's not a great pitcher on sports talk radio and that he's got to go. And he decided, I want to stay in this city. I love this city. I enjoy being here. I want to stay here. I also think he's a pretty funny dude.
Yeah. He heard the haters, right?
Yeah.
There is no doubt. He heard those haters, right? When he signed with the Mets, he posted on Instagram, right? For a bunch of people that didn't want me back on your team, you all sure are mad in the DMs. Right. And that was a Devin Williams post that he had on Instagram, just kind of attacking some of those Yankee fans. Listen, those Yankee fans that are DMing him, they're trolling him, right? That is like the very small population of people. But I think it's funny, right? I like it. I know Met fans get fired up, especially when they talk about the Yankees. And listen, I am not a Yankee hater, right? I got a lot of friends in here that are Yankee fans. I am not one of those haters. But I know that there's a lot of Met fans, especially listening to this podcast, right, that are just salivating at Devin Williams just crushing, taking a little poke at the New York Yankees.
Yeah, and the talk is funny, but he's got to back it up, right? And so I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, a little bit of something to prove, whether he's the closer, he's a setup guy. I'm excited, right? I'm excited.
No doubt.
And the Airbenders in Queens.
Yeah, for sure. And, he signed this contract and is coming into the Mets organization, I think saying to him that I don't know if I'm the closer, and that's okay. I don't think he signed with the Mets and they promised him that he's going to have that 9th inning. I don't think, obviously, it clearly didn't matter. He got paid, right? He got a very nice contract, 3 for $51. That is nothing to, hold your nose up to. And so I think that still leaves that door open for the Mets to still make that move, right? And we talked about what about Diaz, okay? All reports is that the Mets are still engaged and they're still interested in bringing Edwin Díaz back. And I know a lot of Met fans, if you're going to have a sigh of relief when they hear that, is that the New York Mets are still interested in bringing Díaz back and having this 1-2 punch at the back end of games that is going to be one of, if not the best in baseball, hopefully.
Yeah, I fully expect that the Mets are going to stay in on that. I just hope that they cross the line in the sand because that's probably what it's going to take to keep them.
Yeah, it sounds like that 5th year is really the sticking point. And we'll see, if the Blue Jays offer Edwin Díaz the 5th year and he comes back to the Mets and says, if you match this, I'll stay with you, which I do think it's going to happen. I think he liked his time right here in New York. We treated him well. The dude's got his own like walk-up song. He kind of like created that. Right now, like Phillies are doing it, right? Other teams are trying to orchestrate that for the ninth inning, having all these theatrics, right? But that was Edwin Díaz who started that whole thing, right? Which is awesome. And when you go to Citi Field, right, all of our Met fans in the ninth inning, he comes out. That place is electric. It was electric during the playoffs. It was electric right in the regular season. And so that is something that matters, right? This guy was treated well here. Even in 2019, right? He didn't come off to a great start, but he wasn't driven out of town here. He's been here now for 7 years, okay? And so, I think he definitely wants to stay here in New York as long as the Mets do the right thing by him.
I mean, that sounds great. Let's talk about a guy who shouldn't stay in New York.
Whew.
Let's turn things up on Jeff McNeil. So
I see.
Yeah. I think that David Stearns is going to continue to shake things up with this roster. There was a lot made about the negativity that took place on this roster. Brendan Nimmo is obviously no longer part of this team, and everybody's looking at that and with the Marcus Semien trade and saying there's no way that Jeff McNeil has a spot on this team. Where is he playing? As of today, Jeff McNeil's the starting left fielder of the New York Mets. There's no other person that's filling that role, and that absolutely can't happen.
Dude, I'll go out in left field. Right, I think a lot of Met fans would like to see just a random dude hanging out there in left field and having McNeil for this year. And honestly, so
listen,
Jeff
as long as
Passan,
you don't throw your helmet around when you're out there, you'll probably be just fine.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to get into a fight with Lindor. Right, that's what I'm not going to do. Right, that dude is the leader of this team. Right, and that is the second time we've heard this dude McNeil getting into a fight with our captain or should be captain. And so, whatever's going on over there, that needs to get broken up. And so we talked about Jeff Passan a lot on this pod, right? We said that he's pretty much one of the most, if not the most respected baseball guy in all of sports. He obviously writes for ESPN. And so he came out with an article. He talked about 30 players that might get traded this year, and he gave percentages. Jeff McNeil was the highest percentage that he gave in terms of what he believes to be a person that is going to be traded this offseason. Neil was given an 80% chance of being traded. And when we looked at a lot of those other ones, it was like 50, 60, 50, 60, right? It was this maybe type of thing, but it was pretty definitive for Passan and the New York Mets trading McNeil.
Yeah, I think Passan is looking at what everybody else is seeing out there and saying there's no way the Mets have this guy back on his team, giving an 80% likelihood from Jeff Passan, the guy we all view as the guru of the MLB when it comes to this stuff. I think that's pretty legit, and maybe that's me wanting to believe it very badly as a fan that Jeff McNeil doesn't have a spot on this roster anymore. It's kind of crazy. If he does have a spot on this roster, it can't be as your starting left fielder, and that means he's a utility player that you're sticking in a bunch of random spots, and he's making a lot of money as compared to the rest of this roster.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at it right now, currently, this year, he's going to count for the 5th highest on the New York Mets in terms of against their salary cap. $15.75 million for this year. I know obviously Devin Williams is making more than that, but when we look at the signing bonus and we looked at that deferred money, it's only going to count about $12 million towards our cap. But Jeff McNeil is counting $15.75 million. This dude's got to go, and I think that's going to be the biggest hiccup, right? I don't see a team like I've heard Pittsburgh, I've heard Seattle, I've heard Giants. Maybe the Giants might take on this contract, but I can't imagine Pittsburgh or Seattle taking on that full contract and that full amount of money. And I'm okay. I am okay with the Mets not getting back a great return, eating half of that money, and getting rid of this guy, because I do think the clubhouse needs a shift, a dynamic. I'm not saying that Jeff McNeil is the reason why the New York Mets didn't make the playoffs, but it's pretty clear that things are getting shaken up, and I think McNeil, his time as a New York Met is up for his career.
Yeah, and I don't think the money should have any factor in it. You're throwing $17 million down the toilet on Frankie Montas. It's $15 million for Jeff McNeil. If you have to eat half the contract, if you have to eat $10 million of the contract for the sake of this team being cohesive, I just think he's got to go.
Yeah, and Steve Cohen has done this, right? We've seen Steve Cohen pay for prospects. We saw Steve Cohen eat the majority of the money for Scherzer. We saw Steve Cohen eat the majority of money for Verlander. And so he's clearly not afraid to do those types of things. For him, he looks at that money's already been spent. Let's all not feel bad for Steve Cohen either, right? That dude just got a casino, okay? And so I think he's in pretty good shape over here. That guy's about to make boatloads of money.
Talk to me about the casino.
Dude, he's already the 50th wealthiest person in all of America or the world, right? This dude's loaded.
Yeah, you want to talk to me about the casino, then I didn't Give me Pete Alonso, give me Edwin Díaz. All right. If you're going to bring up the casino, then there's no amount of, I don't want to hear about years and blah, blah, blah. Do what you got to do, Steve. Come on.
Dude, that's what 2030. 2030, man. We're going to sign every single free agent. That's going to be lit.
Steve can bankroll it until then.
All right. We got a quick promo here, right? This episode is brought to you by Christina. She has her own business. It's called By the Bay Designs. Looking for a one-of-a-kind piece that's made just for you? Meet By the Bay Designs, a small business run by Christina. She's an artist who has embroiderers every sweater and custom piece with care, creativity, and a touch of coastal charm. Whether you want a personalized gift, a cozy embroidered sweatshirt, or a custom design that tells your story, Christina brings your ideas to life, stitch by stitch. I've seen this girl legitimately stitch by stitch doing this. Check out her work on Instagram at By the Bay Designs. That's plural L-I. And shop the full collection on Etsy at By the Bay Designs L-I. Treat yourself or someone you love to truly something handmade. By the Bay Designs L-I. Wearable art made from the heart.
Love that. Check out Christina's stuff.
Yeah, it's legit, man. She's got good stuff.
Does she have Met stuff, Justin?
Yeah, she's got Met stuff. She's got baseball stuff. She's got football stuff, right? The holidays are coming up. She's willing to put in that extra work, okay? And so she's a good friend of mine, and I was happy to give a shout out to her.
Awesome. All right, we are going to jump over to our next segment now, the group chat headline segment. These are screenshots from our Meet the Mets fans group chat with me, Justin, and Sid. And a lot of people throw things at us that we see on social media. We add them all to the group chat, and these are some of the headlines that we want to have some conversation around.
Yeah, I don't even think we talk in the group chat. I think we just send screenshots to each other, right? No one even responds or likes something, right? It's not even conversations at this point. If someone looked at that, they'd be like, dude, are you guys all right? It's just like screenshot, link, screenshot, link, screenshot. It's crazy.
You want to take this first one, Justin?
Yeah, first up here, we got Joe Ryan. This has been something that's actually come, the last couple of days, right, that has really made some headlines. Joe Ryan is a pitcher for Minnesota Twins. The Twins are a rebuilding team. They had a terrible year last year. They sold at the deadline, but they have a lot of interesting pieces. We're actually going to be talking about not just Joe Ryan. We're going to be talking about another Minnesota Twin that might be available via trade that has a lot of appeal in terms of the Mets. Joe Ryan is a pitcher that has been really consistent, right, over the last 5 years. He has about a 3.5 ERA over those 5 years. Someone that has a sneaky fastball. He definitely pitches right from the fastball, right, and then works off of that. He's not someone that's throwing 99, but he's pretty deceptive, right? And it's someone that is going to be a lot of interest for the New York Mets. I've heard that Twins might be interested in Jonah Tong, which is obviously one of our young stud pitchers that we have down in the minor leagues. Jonah Tong, by the way, was the #1 minor league pitcher in all of baseball last year, not just for the Mets, but in all of baseball. And so he is someone that is 22 years old, exciting. We obviously Met fans know him because he pitched at the end of the year, had his ups and downs, but he is still someone with a lot of value. Joe Ryan is an interesting trade target for the New York Mets.
Yeah, it's tough, right? He is a guy that I don't necessarily know as an ace. I think he's a solid pitcher. He's a number 2, 3 pitcher. Jonah Tong has potential, right? Like, this is the guy going into last year that we said is the Mets' biggest pitching prospect. He's better than Nolan McLean. And now they all got to the major leagues. We look at Nolan McLean and say, wow, like, this guy might be the next coming of Jacob deGrom. But Jonah Tong has got this like ace pedigree behind him, and trading him for a guy who's not an ace is a big risk. That being said, you got to take big risks if you're trying to revamp this team. If we're saying that Jonah Tong is part of a package that includes Brandon Sproat, I don't make that trade, because I'm not trading 2 of our top 2 arms, our top 2 prospects, and that's not to say that Nolan McLean isn't one. He's just off the table, right? So Nolan McLean's not getting traded. Forget that he's even a prospect. He's our ace at the moment. The next 2 guys are Tong and Sproat, and I can't trade them both in a trade to get anyone personally. And so I if Jonah Tong is the primary piece, he's the only starting pitching prospect we're sending over, I'm definitely entertaining it.
Yeah, I think what's the biggest appeal with Joe Ryan is that he's got 2 years left of arbitration. This year is going to be making about $6 million. Next year we'll see it's probably upwards of $10 million, which are obviously really reasonable contracts for a guy that is that solid 2. I agree with you. I don't know necessarily he's an ace, but he is reliable. And I think for the New York Mets, that is something that we really need to consider going into this year, is that we have a lot of guys that have a high ceiling, right? We saw Minaya 2 years ago pitch, and he was one of like one of the best, right, for us. Okay. We've seen Senga, right? He has pitched to a under 2 ERA for half a season. We've seen him pitch a full season under a 3 ERA. But those guys are inconsistent, right? We saw David Peterson, again, another inconsistent pitcher. But Joe Ryan does bring stability to this rotation, something that the New York Mets absolutely do need to consider and do need. The New York Mets missed the playoffs by 1 game last year. Joe Ryan was on this team. The New York Mets are in the playoffs, right? And who knows what would have happened last year.
I hear that, but if Jonah Tung was on this team for a little longer, if Brandon Sproat was on our team for a little bit longer, if Nolan McLean was on our team for a little bit longer, maybe the Mets are in the playoffs. And so it depends on the package. I will speak to his stability. So if Joe Ryan is a guy that we're looking at it when it comes to stability, you look at his numbers in terms of games started. In 2022, which is his first big league season, 27 games started. Then 29 games in 2023. In 2024, it dropped down a little bit to 23 games started, and then 30 games started last year. So this guy takes the mound, and that's important. I agree with you. It's important to have guys that are going to go out there and that are going to throw quality innings for you and throw beyond a quality start. We barely have guys that can throw quality starts on this team. And so is he an upgrade? Yeah, he's an upgrade for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no, he's someone that I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, our next one that we're going to put up on the screen for you guys now, this is from Jeff Passan again, from that article that we mentioned earlier, and it's Byron Buxton. So Byron Buxton is another guy from Minnesota. We should pair them together. You know, if we can make a trade for Byron Buxton and Joe Ryan, I'm more intrigued by that, right? If it's one or the other, we'll see. But if you can get both of those guys in a trade, that's awesome. According to Passan, there's a 35% chance that he gets traded. Byron Buxton is a super interesting player. I've actually had him on my fantasy team for a lot of years, hoping that he'd finally break out and be a star. And that's what everybody says he's capable of doing. He just never stays healthy.
Yeah. Buxton is definitely really intriguing. Okay. Once again, he's got a really reasonable contract. He's 32 years old, though. He is coming off a career year, but that career year was only 120 games. That is the most amount of games that he has played since 2017, in which he played about 127 games. And so the biggest issue with Byron Buxton, number one, no trade clause. I heard he's willing to waive it. I also heard he's willing to waive it for Atlanta because he's a Georgia native. Don't love to hear that type of stuff. But I do think if the Mets came knocking and he was offered this ability to come to the New York Mets, a potential World Series contender for next year, I do think he would waive that no trade clause. But I don't necessarily know if the New York Mets are going to go after this guy. We just talked about dependability. We just talked about how the New York Mets need stability. And so this guy, yes, no one can deny his talent. This dude hit 35 home runs in 120 games, okay, last year. He is elite. Good base runner, plays great defense also, amazing athlete. But the biggest problem that we have is that he just doesn't play. Every year you go into the season saying, if Buxton is healthy, if Buxton is healthy, if he is healthy, he's one of the best. The problem is that big word, if. And when we're looking at 120 games, the second most he's ever played in his career, and he's been around for a while. This is not a dude that's just been up here for a couple of years.
Yeah, he's got a 10-year career. He made his major league debut in 2015. Yeah, 102 games played from 2024, and then the last time before that he even hit 100 games was in 2017.
That's what I mean. You know, like it's a little scary, right? But again, he's elite. You plug him in, and he's a four-hitter, right? Like, and again, whatever happens with Alonso, but he's someone that can slot right behind Soto, and he can be successful. He's going to protect Soto for sure. And so those guys don't just come available. Those guys are not just like, everyday guys around there. And so you can't just like throw that out just because of that, but it would be a massive risk. And it's going to take a lot to get him, right? He's going to be someone that a lot of teams are going to be vying for sure. All right, our next up that we got over here that we're going to be putting up on the screen, we got Freddie Peralta, ? Freddie Peralta, obviously he's the Brewers, okay? We know the Stearns connection, okay? A lot of people are like, oh, he's definitely going to get traded because David Stearns knows him, all right? Freddie Peralta, though, is an interesting pitcher. Once again, when we're looking at his stats, he is another reliable arm. I think what the most intriguing thing about Freddie Peralta is that he's only making about $8 million this year. Now, this is the last year of arbitration, and so it's a potential that this dude is going to be a rental. But Freddie Peralta, you can't deny his talent, right? And not only is he talented, but he's someone that is pretty reasonable in terms of contracts. And we're going to be taking a look at, the Mets salary cap, right? in a segment now down below, and we'll see like it's getting up there already, right? With this Devin Williams signing, and we have a lot of like holes that we still need to fill here. And if we could fill a hole with a guy like Joe Ryan making $6 million or Freddie Peralta making $8 million, and we can plug those guys up into our 1-2 slot in our rotation, that's not bad. I mean, this guy had a 2.70 ERA last year, right? 1.08 WHIP. That's elite. Right, when you're talking about starting pitching, for sure.
Yeah, when we talked about our wish list and we talked about what our offseason plans were going to be, this is a guy that we talked about a little bit, and pretty much we all said Tarek Skubal, right? Like that's the guy that we want to go get, and that may not be a realistic possibility, but according to Ken Rosenthal, the Brewers are considering cracking the door open, and that's a what if type of situation. But if the door is cracked open, I think you have to explore it. If you're David Stearns, you have to call up an old friend and find out what it's going to take to get this guy, even on a rental, and then hope that you can sign him to a longer term contract. But $8 million is legit. He's the type of guy that brings stability, that brings ace-like talent. I'm not necessarily know that I'm going to call him an ace, but he's definitely a number 2, bordering on an ace level type of pitcher. And so if you can get him for $8 million, it's worth a lot.
Yeah, his last 5 years, you have 27 starts, and you had 17 starts in 2022, right? Obviously an injury season, but then you got 30, you got 32, and then you got 33. And so once again, the New York Mets need reliability. Freddie Peralta is a guy that takes the ball every 5 days, and he is someone that is reliable. You can't deny that. 4 of the last 5 years, he's had at least 27 starts, and that is something for the New York Mets that we can absolutely use. He's done 176 innings, 173, right? So he's up there, okay? He's a guy that can throw innings. He can give you length. He's a guy that can give you a quality start. Something that the New York Mets obviously lacked in 2025.
So, Josh, I'll throw it at you. Joe Ryan or Freddie Peralta? If you can get both, not both, if you can get either or, who do you want?
Yeah, I think it does depend on the package, right? I'm with you. Okay. I think Joe Ryan's obviously is going to be a lot more in terms of prospects. He's got 2 years left of arbitration. I think they're pretty similar in terms of their talent. If you're telling me that I can get Freddie Peralta and somehow I'm holding on to Tong and Sproat, our 2 big pitching prospects, or I'm just trading one of those guys and I'm able to keep the rest of my young prospects, I'm going to say right now I'd probably take the stab at Freddie Peralta.
Yeah, I take the stab at Freddie Peralta. I'm also willing to pay a little bit more to get him because I do think he's a notch above Joe Ryan in terms of his talent and his ability to lead the pitching staff of the Mets and be a nice guy for Nolan McLean to bounce things off of, right? I feel like he can learn a lot from him. So let's hope the Mets go make a trade here during these winter meetings. Another potential trade for the New York Mets that we're going to throw up here for you guys now. This is one that was talked about endlessly at the trade deadline. I think I hated it at the trade deadline. Luis Robert. So he has 2 years left in his contract. He's making $20 million, and he has been a bust for the last 2 years. He has not been great for Chicago. They last year kind of said we're not going to trade him off of one down season, that he's low value. But now it's 2 bad seasons in a row. They might definitely have him on the block. This is a guy you're interested in, Justin?
Yeah, Luis Roberts is an interesting guy. Obviously, he's a good defender. He's a plus defender. He had 2 years ago, he hit 38 home runs. Okay, he was in the MVP conversations. He was, coming up. People were like, this is the next young stud, right, in the major leagues. And for everyone looking at this, that they said, yeah, this is a shoo-in. Okay, and like you said before, the last 2 years they've been abysmal, right? Like you're talking about a player that on some major leagues teams, he's not even going to be startable. Okay. Now he does have a reasonable contract. I'm not saying it's like the Freddie Peralta or the Joe Ryan. You mentioned he's got the 2 years left. He's got the 2 years left, but it's one of those years is a club option that they can decide to pick up for $20 million. So it really could be just a 1 year deal. You're not locking yourself up into a 2 year deal with Luis Robert. If he stinks, right? If you trade for him and he stinks this year, right? You just don't pick up that $20 million club option. If you're asking me, do I want Luis Robert or do I want Brandon Nimmo, right? Because that's essentially like pretty similar in terms of dollar amount. I probably would take the stab at Luis Robert just because of his athleticism and the ability, and his contract is obviously a lot less in terms of the number of years, right, that you had to rely on him. I don't think it's going to take a lot to get Luis Robert. And if it does, you walk away from that, right? I heard Luis Angel Acuna as someone that the Chicago White Sox might be interested in. And if you're telling me that's a straight up Luis Angel Acuna for Luis Robert, which I don't think it would be. I think the Mets have to add a little bit more into it. It's definitely intriguing. Definitely something that we should consider, considering that we have Tyrone Taylor as our center fielder right now, and we don't have a left fielder, and so we definitely can't just shoo that away.
Yeah, if it's Luis Angel Acuna for Luis Robert straight up, I think everyone makes that trade, which means that's not what it's going to take. But let's say that was the trade. Acuna has a specific role on this team, and it is like to be a pinch runner and a defensive replacement. So you'd be replacing that guy and moving Tyrone Taylor into that role to be a defensive replacement and a speed guy off the bench. And Luis Robert becomes your starting center fielder. He's definitely an upgrade in that way. So I can definitely see a move being made here. The outfield is a problem, right? And we're going to talk about this when we get to our next segment of like, how do you fill all these holes with the amount of money you have left if you want all the things that Met fans want? And so I think $20 million is not that bad for an outfielder. I just don't know that he can bounce back. The upside though is so good, right? If he can bounce back, you now have an MVP caliber type of player. Is he going to be able to do that? I don't know. Let me throw this at you, Josh. Let's say it's not Acuna, but let's say it's Mark Vientos. If they say we want Mark Vientos in the package back for Luis Robert, you make that trade?
Yeah, that doesn't change anything for me. If the Mets value Luis Robert and say that we think that this guy's going to be a bounce back, I don't think a Vientos or Acuna are going to hold me back from making those types of those trades. Oh yeah, baby, put him down. Go ahead. When he gets traded,
what did you say?
You know when he's off this roster, you know that bobblehead's going away.
That's a no for me. I don't think I can do that.
You love him.
I do.
You love him. You love him.
But Justin, this guy can hit 30 home runs. If we are expecting Luis Robert to have a bounce back season, why don't we expect that from our own prospects, from our own talent?
Yeah, it's not that I don't like Vientos. It's that the Mets have a need. The Mets' need right now is outfield, right? The Mets' need is not infield. We have a surplus, I believe, a surplus of infielders, not just on the major league roster, but also in the minor league rosters. And so what we don't have, though, is a surplus of outfielders on either of those, right? I know Carson Bench is someone that they're talking about. Dude, we got Tyrone Taylor as our center fielder, right? Like, what are we doing here? We don't even have a left fielder. McNeil can't be our left fielder. We just traded him.
But if Luis Robert, yeah, I know we traded him. But if Luis Robert sucks, he's not that much better than Tyrone Taylor. Him at his worst is not that bad as compared to Tyrone Taylor playing elite defense also, and we paid pretty much nothing for Tyrone Taylor's elite defense. So it's a $20 million investment and I don't know that I'm willing to make it on this guy. For Acuna, I'm willing to make it. For Vientos, I want to bet that Vientos could be the DH that we need.
Dude, I'll buy you Vientos' jersey even if he gets traded, all right, man?
Well, then when am I going to wear it?
All right. When they play the White Sox, what do you mean?
All right, fine. All right, we're going to move on to our last headline segment, and this one we spent some time talking about. It's an interesting one for us to throw up here. It's not really Met related if you look at it, but let's take a look. Craig Carton is coming back to the afternoon drive on WFAN.
Yeah, if you listen to this podcast, you know who Craig Carton is, all right? Let's be real here, okay? And so Craig Carton obviously he's got this this attraction, and so is WFAN, right? It's like those two people that just keep coming back to each other. And that's what Craig Carton is with WFAN. It's like those two people, no matter how long they've been separated for, they just keep coming back to each other, okay? And I'm excited. Craig Carton he's just a talent, man. He's not like this nerdy sports guy. He would never be doing a podcast about the New York Mets. I'll tell you right now, if he ever heard any of these things, he would immediately turn this off.
You don't think we can get Craigie to come on the pod?
No, definitely not. But what we got to get on this pod is going to be Evan Roberts, because my man is getting impacted by this, right? And I really hope that WFAN went to him, they talked to him, and he's cool with this. He's obviously been the afternoon drives with Tiki for a while now. He was the afternoon drive with Carton. It seems like they're trying to keep Tiki and Roberts together in now the afternoon shift, right, which is that 10 to 2 slot. And then Carton's going to slot into that 2 to 6 or 2 to 6:30, whatever they do for the time wise. But our boy Evan Roberts, who, for me personally, when I think about podcasting and the New York Mets, that's who I think of. The Reiko Bronya. I know we're doing a podcast, but if you haven't heard of the Reiko Bronya and you're a Met fan, you definitely should check that guy out. He's phenomenal. He is, I think, the biggest Met fan that we have here, for sure, on the fan.
Yeah, I think we both listen to the Reiko Bronya pretty regularly. Every single episode that comes out, we're listening to Evan. You should be listening to Evan, and You know, a lot of fans listen to Evan. He's got one of the most successful podcasts out there, and what he's doing is pretty awesome on his pod, things that he can't dive into as deeply on WFAN. So, you know, for me, that's a little bit of a shot personally of not being able to listen to Evan on WFAN while I'm driving home. It'll be Craig, but I do think it's probably better for Evan. It's been interesting the last couple of days. The hosts have not explicitly said anything because it's not officially announced. This is all just kind of leaked information that this is happening. And I remember on, was it Wednesday? Evan was being pretty tight-lipped, right? He's like, no comment, no comment, no comment. And then eventually he got to the point of saying, like, hypothetically, if they asked me if I wanted to be back with Craig in the afternoon drive, he went into this whole thing about like, well, now I'm with Tiki, and I'm not going to leave my partner that I'm with now for the guy who left me originally. And he's like, I'm going to stick with Tiki. But you brought up a great point when we were talking about this probably works better for Evan as a Met fan.
Definitely. You know, Evan, if you listen to WFAN, you know that this dude like goes to a lot of Met games. He brings his son to a lot of Met games, and they've recorded this guy, or he's recorded himself like sprinting and running, trying to get to the Met games on time. Obviously, the show is going until 6:30, and so he's trying to now get to the game for 7:00. And this guy is such a freak. He's got all of his his scorecards out there, and he every single pitch he's got to hit, he's got to write down. And so for him, maybe this is a good thing, right? He did the afternoon drive with Joe B for years. It's obviously not the premier spot. Yeah, the midday, he obviously was not, sorry, the midday. It's obviously not the premier spot, right, on WFAN, but maybe it's a good thing for him, right? Maybe it helps out with his lifestyle, specifically going to Net games and going to Met games. Evan, if you're listening, man, I would love to have you on, and and we feel for you, man, if you're upset with that move.
All right, we are gonna transition now to the last segment that we'll have for you guys today. It's our Mets GM game segment, and if you're like, what are these guys going to present to us now? It's pretty much an update on where we're at with this team. And one of the things that we want you guys to kind of take a look at is the Mets' current payroll and the 2026 free agent list. So we made a little graphic here. We'll throw this up on the screen. Justin, you want to walk us through the numbers right now on the payroll?
Yeah. Again, this is not official, right? But like from what we've seen here is that the New York Mets currently, now this is with the Devin Williams signing, and we talked about it before, that Devin Williams is going to count about $12 million like towards the cap. And right now, currently the Mets are sitting about $260 million for their payroll. If we think about last year, the Mets got upwards of about $240 million. And so if we are at least matching what we did last year, now $340, that was after the trade deadline. So if we're willing to at least get to those numbers again this year, we're looking about $80 million that the New York Mets are still willing to play with. Now, again, I don't know if they're trying to leave a little bit of money again for that trade deadline. I'm not sure if they're going to go to that 340 mark, before the season. But when we're looking right now, $261 million is a lot of money so far that the New York Mets have spent. And there are a lot of holes that the New York Mets need to fill still, right, for this team.
Yeah. So, a lot of holes to fill. If you want back, and I want back Pete Alonso, Edwin Díaz, we're going to add those guys to the payroll. That's $60 million, $55 million that you're going to be spending on those two guys. That doesn't leave us with a whole lot of wiggle room. And the things we're saying we absolutely need back, we need to fix our starting rotation, which maybe we can fix with a Freddie Peralta trade. And then we need an outfielder, and you don't have a lot of money to go get him with. So what you guys are looking at now on your screen for our visual audience, you guys are seeing a list of all the 2026 free agents. For all the audio-only folks, we'll kind of walk you guys through here. So we have a list of starters. The only starting pitcher that's a 2026 free agent to come off the board is Dylan Cease. All the other guys, Fromber, Ranger Suarez, Michael King, Zach Gallen, Imai, Little, all of these guys are still available. They're still out there to be signed. In terms of hitters, the only hitter to come off the board is Josh Naylor. We still got Kyle Tucker, Pete Alonso, Kyle Schwarber, Bregman, Bichette, Bellinger, Murakami, the list goes on. And then in terms of what's moved in the market so far leading up to the winter meetings is the reliever market. And that's where a lot of the names have come off the board. Raisel Iglesias has come off the board, Ryan Helsley off the board, Phil Maton off the board, Emilio Pagan, as of yesterday, is now off the board as well, returned to Cincinnati. And then obviously the Mets signed Devin Williams, so we have him circled in an orange circle. That's a guy that the Mets got. Everybody else that's on this list: Edwin Díaz, Robert Suarez, Kenley Jansen, Pete Fairbanks, Kyle Finnegan are your top names. Those guys are all still available. So what now, Justin? How do we make this happen?
Yeah. No, I know. That number's scary, that $261 million. And so, when you're looking at the starting pitcher, right? I know the New York Mets were linked to Framber Valdez, right? There was a report, right on Black Friday last week that the New York Mets were basically like it was finalizing. It was a done deal. The New York Mets are the favorites to sign Framber Valdez for 210. It's been a week now. I haven't heard anything in terms of updates on that contract, right? And so I just can't see it that the New York Mets are going to give Framber Valdez, a 32-year-old pitcher, $30 million. And when we're looking at their payroll and we're looking at what the New York Mets still need, I don't know if it makes sense for the New York Mets to be doing those types of deals for these starting pitching. Framber Valdez is a really good pitcher. I put him in the similar category as Joe Ryan, Freddie Peralta, right? They're guys that the New York Mets are going to still be like a 1A type of situation. This is not a Scooble. Like, this is not a guy that you're plugging in and saying, this is my opening day starter no matter what. And so, when we're looking at starting pitching, I can't give that $30 million to any of those guys right up there. All right. We talked about Michael King. I think that's someone that still is intriguing. Imai, right? The guy over from Japan is someone that is pretty interesting, but I've heard, upwards of 7 for 175. Again, another high contract. And the New York Mets need reliability. And so I really think where the New York Mets are going in terms of starting pitching is through the trade market. Hopefully one of those guys become available that we mentioned before. And if it's not one of those guys, the New York Mets need to really explore other options, right? Because I can't see the New York Mets adding $30 million from a pitcher on the free agent market.
Yeah. The hope is that they go out there and they make a trade. Right now, that starting rotation of the New York Mets is the same starting rotation that it was last year. With the young guys on the team for the full year, is it good enough, Justin? Is it good enough if you have Nolan McLean on this team as your headline starter with a full year under his belt as a New York Met? You'll have your David Peterson. You'll have Sean Manaea. You'll hopefully have a healthy Kodai Senga. You got your Brandon Sproat. Clay Holmes are all the guys that are on the team right now. Is this team, if they decide we're going to go spend the money to bring back Pete, to bring back Edwin, and to add an outfielder, we're not going to add a starting pitcher, is this rotation good enough?
No, definitely not. And there's no way David Stearns is going into this year saying that this is okay. It's one of the big things he addressed in the offseason. He talked about run prevention. When he says run prevention, I think he's just talking about he needs better starting pitching, right? Yeah, sure, it's defense matters, and that is definitely something. But like, if you can get pitchers that are actually good, that's how you prevent runs from happening, all right? And so, I just can't imagine the New York Mets and David Stearns relying on these guys again going into this season. It's too big of a risk for a payroll that is upwards of over $300 million for them to go into the season with question marks in multiple or potentially multiple areas. I just don't see how David Stearns is able to lay down in bed and say, yeah, I think we're good here. Okay. Especially with our starting pitching market. There's no way.
Yeah. So it is going to be tight to get all these things done then.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, that's why that Joe Ryan, that's why that Freddie Peralta are so enticing, I think, for the Mets, is because of their contracts. Even Sandy Alcantara, right? Again, that's another enticing contract, right, for the New York Mets that they should be exploring. I just can't see the Mets paying top dollar for one of these starting pitchers that are currently available on the market.
Well, not with all these guys on the payroll, right? So if you can trade Jeff McNeil's contract off of the books, $15 million off the books, if you could trade Kodai Senga's contract off the books and potentially bring back either an outfielder or a top line starting pitcher, maybe you can package a Jeff McNeil, a Kodai Senga, a Brandon Sproat into a deal that gets you a starting pitcher, and then you go spend your money on Pete Alonso, Edwin Díaz, and another outfielder. And then this team really starts to shape up, but they're not going to fill all the holes in just free agency, right? It's not going to be Edwin Díaz, Pete Alonso, Cody Bellinger, and Michael King. They're not getting 4 guys. And I think we've got to come back down a little bit to reality. Those are all guys that I said in my offseason plan I wanted. I'm clearly not getting what I want. The Mets have to make some type of moves here. This is the week for those moves to happen. Hopefully things start to happen on Sunday night, leading into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and hopefully have a really exciting upcoming winter meeting.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated that the reliever market has moved this quickly, especially when you looked at last year. Tanner Scott, the best reliever last year, didn't get signed until January 23rd, where all of these guys now are coming off. And so I don't think Edwin Díaz last past this winter meetings. I think he's a family guy. I think he wants to know what's going on. I think he wants to get settled. I think he wants to make sure that him and his family are set up in the right spot. So I think he's definitely going to be someone that's going to get moved. Is going to get a contract during the winter meetings. I'm excited, man. I think that the Mets, I think they're going to be aggressive, right? Clearly, David Stearns has been one of the most aggressive GMs or president, right, of baseball operations right now, in all of baseball. And I think that's going to just continue. I'm excited for this. The winter meetings are going to be awesome. We're going to be locked in. We will be definitely giving you guys, if any type of major updates, we'll be on the pod, right, immediately, giving you guys our instant reaction. We're not going to guarantee an hour episode like we got going on tonight, but we definitely are going to be giving our instant reaction, right, on any major updates for the Mets.
Let's continue to follow us, guys, on all of our social media platforms. We have a new X account that Justin's running and leading for us.
Let's go.
At Meet the Mets Fans on X. It's also at Meet the Mets Fans on Instagram. Follow us on all of our social media accounts. You'll know when we're going to throw up an episode. You'll know when something big is happening. We hope that you guys continue to support this pod. We've got a good number of people who sent us these reactions. We want to continue to have those reactions. So continue to share that with Justin, myself, with Sid. We look forward to getting you guys on the pod. We want another fan to come on here pretty soon and tell us their Mets origin story, their amazing beginnings.
Let's go Mets, baby. Winter meetings.
Meet the fans, meet the fans, meet the Mets fans. Voices rising up from the stands. Hear their cheers, hear their groans, feel their highs, feel their moans. Stories untold now on the mic. Mets fans,